They found her floating in the Sheikh's pool, silent, lifeless, and wearing nothing but his pendant. The officials called it an accident. The palace called it a tragedy. But those who knew her whispered one word: murder. Her name was Amira, 19, quiet, and invisible to the world she served. She came to Dubai to chase opportunity, to escape the hunger and small dreams of her coastal village. But what she found was a palace built on gold and silence. He was Sheikh Khalid Al-Rashid, a man born into command. His hands signed contracts worth millions. His words could move armies. Yet he lived in a cage of expectation. To the world, he was power. To himself, he was empty. They met by mistake, or maybe by fate. Amira had been sent to deliver a message one evening, a simple envelope that should have passed through another servant. She entered his private study timidly, eyes lowered. He looked up from his desk, and for the first time in years, someone saw him. Not the title, not the name, but the man behind both. Their first conversation was brief, polite, forgettable to anyone else. But that night, neither of them slept. He began noticing her in the hallways, the way she moved quietly, how her hands trembled slightly when she poured tea. He asked questions about her hometown, her family, her dreams, small gestures that turned into late-night talks, then into secret meetings. At first, it was just words, then it became touches, then it became something neither of them could control. They met in hidden rooms and empty courtyards, under the illusion that their secret was safe. But in a palace, walls are never deaf, and loyalty bends easily under the weight of gossip. Layla, Khalid's wife, had always known how to read the silence in her home. She had been married long enough to understand that when her husband smiled less, it wasn't business that troubled him. It was someone else. At first, she dismissed it. The sheikh had his moods, and she had learned to look away. But then came the scent. Faint jasmine on his robe, a fragrance she never wore. Then the whispers among the servants, quickly silenced, but never gone. Layla watched and waited. She began timing his absences, watching his reflection rather than his face when they dined together. She saw how his eyes wandered toward the servants' quarters, how his voice softened when certain names were mentioned. It took her 3 weeks to confirm what she already knew. The investigator she hired was discreet, efficient, and loyal to her family. Within days he returned with photographs, blurred, grainy images that needed no explanation. Khalid and Amira standing too close, laughing too freely, touching in the garden after midnight. Layla's heart did not break. It calcified. She confronted no one. Not yet. She waited until the night Khalid left for a conference in Doha, leaving the palace quiet and half asleep. Then she summoned Amira to her chambers. The girl entered nervously, unaware of the storm waiting inside. Layla sat in silence for a long time before speaking. "You love him," she said finally. Amira's lips parted, but no sound came. Her silence was answer enough. Layla smiled, not cruelly, but like someone delivering a verdict. She opened a velvet box and placed it on the table between them. Inside lay an emerald pendant and a one-way ticket home. "Take these," she said softly. "Leave tonight. If you stay, you won't survive what follows." Amira's hands shook as she took the box. She whispered a thank you and fled the room, heart pounding. She should have left. She should have vanished. But love doesn't follow logic. It follows obsession. By dawn, she returned to the palace. She wanted to see him one last time, to explain, to believe that his promises still meant something. Khalid was shocked to find her in his chamber. When she told him what had happened, his face hardened. He swore he would protect her, that they would leave together. They planned to meet that night by the pool. He would dismiss the guards, pack his documents, and escape before sunrise. It sounded foolish even then, but love thrives on foolishness. She waited by the pool, the pendant glinting against her throat, the night air heavy with perfume and fear. Minutes passed, then an hour. Khalid never came. Someone else did. A shadow moved near the veranda, tall, silent, familiar. Layla stepped into the light, her robe trailing across the marble floor. She said nothing at first, just stared. When she spoke, her voice was calm. "You should have left." No one knows what happened next. Some say they argued. Others claim there was a struggle. By the time the guards arrived, the water was still, the night quiet again. The report said Amira slipped. The marble was wet, the lighting poor. An accident, nothing more. The palace issued condolences, arranged a burial, and erased her name from the staff list within a day. Khalid returned from Doha to find everything already finished. The pool drained, the servants replaced, the story sealed. He stood beside the water for hours, refusing to move. No one dared speak to him. From that day, he stopped appearing in public. His business meetings were canceled, his voice gone from every room. He ate little, slept less. Sometimes the guards heard him whispering her name at night. Layla continued her life as if nothing had happened. She hosted dinners, smiled for photographs, and managed the household with mechanical grace. But servants spoke of strange things. How she avoided mirrors, how she burned a pair of wet slippers in the courtyard one morning, and how her hands trembled whenever she heard the sound of running water. Months passed. Dubai moved on, as cities do, forgetting quickly what they were told to ignore, until the day the gardener found something buried beneath a newly planted palm. It was a pendant, emerald, scratched, still, shining faintly in the sunlight, the same pendant Layla had given Amira. When Khalid saw it, he collapsed. No one knows if he cried, prayed, or cursed. That night, he left the palace, driving into the desert alone. He never returned. His car was found days later, engine off, tracks fading into the dunes. Some say he walked into the desert to atone. Others say he was taken by those who wanted the scandal buried forever. Layla lived on in silence, her face growing older, but her eyes frozen in the same quiet fear. And sometimes, when the desert winds howl across the city, the guards swear they hear two voices calling each other's names, one full of regret, the other of forgiveness. Because love, when born in secrecy, never really dies. It just changes its shape, from whispers to hauntings, from memories to ghosts. And in the heart of Dubai, where gold blinds and power hide sin, there are stories that will never be told aloud. But if you listen closely enough, you might still hear them. The city never spoke of Amira again, but silence in Dubai is never truly silent. It hums beneath marble floors, between mirrored towers, in the way people lower their voices when certain names are mentioned. Months passed, and life in the palace resumed its rehearsed rhythm. Guests arrived, deals were signed, dinners were held beneath chandeliers that looked like frozen rain. But every reflection of Khalid was a ghost of the man he had been. His laughter no longer reached his eyes. His wife's touch made him flinch. His footsteps echoed like a stranger's. He had loved a girl he was never meant to touch, and in losing her, he had lost everything else. The royal press office released a story months later, something about a charitable donation in the name of an anonymous employee. But among those who had served long enough, the message was clear. A price had been paid. The palace gates closed earlier these days. Guards rotated more often. Security cameras were replaced with newer ones. To anyone watching, it was routine maintenance. To those who knew, it was fear. Then, one evening, a letter arrived. No name, no return address. The handwriting delicate, the words faint. It said, "Truth sleeps beneath your garden." Khalid dismissed it at first. A cruel prank, maybe, or the work of some journalist chasing ghosts. But at night, he would wake sweating, certain he had heard footsteps outside his window. Layla noticed the change. She began locking her door, though she never said why. Weeks later, another letter appeared, slipped under her door this time. "Do you still hear her?" Layla burned it immediately, yet for days after, the smell of smoke lingered on her hands no matter how many times she washed them. Servants whispered that Amira's room, long cleared out, carried a chill that no air conditioner could explain, that her perfume sometimes drifted through the corridors, though every bottle had been thrown away. The housekeeper left, then another, and another. Khalid brought in new staff, imported from other cities, told them nothing. But one night, a young maid from Cairo came running out of the servant wing, trembling. She swore she'd seen a woman standing at the end of the corridor, hair long, dress soaked, eyes open, but unblinking. When she blinked again, the woman was gone. Khalid said nothing. But that night, he went to the pool. He stood at the edge, staring at the water until dawn. The surface was calm, yet his reflection shimmered like something alive beneath it. He whispered her name once, softly. The ripples moved though the air was still. After that, he stopped speaking entirely. Days passed before Layla realized she hadn't heard his voice. He ate in silence, worked in silence, existed in silence. Then, one night, he packed a small bag. Layla found the note the next morning on his desk. It said, "I'm going to find her." He drove east, toward the desert. The car was found abandoned, doors open, keys in the ignition. No tracks, no struggle, just emptiness. Layla stood in front of the mirror that night and saw her own reflection blur. She whispered her husband's name, but the echo that returned was not his. It was hers. For months she lived in quiet denial. But every time it rained, a rare blessing in Dubai, the pool would overflow slightly, and the servant swore the water turned faintly cloudy, as if disturbed from below. She ordered it drained and covered. Grass grew over it. Time passed. A year later, a journalist who'd once covered royal charity events began digging through old staff records. She found Amira's name listed on payroll documents, then abruptly struck out. No reason, no termination note. The journalist wrote an anonymous article online titled, "The Disappeared Maid of Al-Rashid Palace." It gathered small attention, but the comments filled quickly. Former staff, distant relatives, people who'd heard pieces of the story. Her family was paid off. She was pregnant. They buried her in the garden. Layla saw the article. She had it removed within hours, but by then, screenshots had spread across forums and private chat groups. The whispers had returned, stronger than ever. Soon after, Layla fell ill. Doctors found nothing wrong, yet she grew weaker each week. She spoke less, slept less, and sometimes, in the early mornings, she could be heard murmuring to someone unseen. The servants reported hearing two voices, one pleading, one forgiving. When she finally passed, the doctor wrote, "Heart failure." But those who washed her body before burial said her expression was peaceful, almost smiling, as if she had finally heard the words she had been waiting for. The palace closed for renovations soon after. New owners moved in, walls were painted, fountains rebuilt, gardens replanted. But workers began complaining. They said that late at night, when everything was still, they could hear a woman humming from somewhere near the pool, softly, tunelessly, like someone remembering a song from long ago. They searched for the source. They found nothing. One of them, a young man who worked the night shift, quit after 3 days. He told his supervisor, "Every time I close my eyes, I see her reflection in the water." The supervisor laughed it off until he saw it himself. A face just beneath the surface, eyes open, waiting. And so, the pool was sealed again, this time permanently. Grass was laid over it, a bench placed nearby, as if to disguise the memory. Now, years later, tourists and locals alike drive past the mansion without knowing what sleeps beneath its garden. The city grew taller, louder, richer. But sometimes, when the air is thick and still, people claim to hear a whisper carried by the desert wind, soft, almost affectionate. "Don't forget me." Because some loves don't end with death. They simply change form. They linger where promises were broken, where secrets were buried, where hearts once defied the rules of their world. And though her name was erased from records, her story never left. It floats in the silence between power and guilt, between the living and the gone. They found her floating in the Sheikh's pool, silent, lifeless, and wearing nothing but his pendant. But that was never the end. Years later, when the palace was turned into a luxury estate for foreign investors, the story began to surface again, not as fact, but as myth. Realtors spoke in hushed tones about the haunted mansion, though none dared use the Sheikh's name. They said the house brought bad luck. Every owner who tried to live there eventually left without explanation. The first was a businessman from London. He stayed 6 months. Then one morning, he boarded a flight home, leaving his belongings behind. His assistant claimed he woke up each night to the sound of dripping water. He'd follow it through the halls, but every tap was dry. The sound always led him to the same place, the covered pool. The next owner, a Russian investor, ordered the garden excavated to build a wine cellar. But when the workers dug near the pool's edge, the machinery stopped working. Engines cut off, lights flickered, and the foreman refused to continue. He said the ground felt wrong, soft, as if something beneath it was breathing. He quit the next day. The investor laughed at first. Then, 2 weeks later, his wife claimed she'd seen a woman standing at the end of their bed, hair dripping, pendant glinting faintly in the moonlight. She screamed. When her husband turned on the lights, there was no one there. Only water pooling on the marble floor. They sold the property within a month. The house remained empty for years. The city changed around it. Towers rose, highways widened, and the skyline grew brighter. But inside those gates, time refused to move. Then came a filmmaker. Her name was Yasmin, young, ambitious, and fascinated by unsolved mysteries. She'd heard the rumors, the missing maid, the vanished sheikh, the silent wife. To her, it was perfect material for a documentary. She contacted the estate's caretakers, got permission to film, and arrived with a small crew one late afternoon. Cameras rolled as she walked through the empty halls, narrating softly about the forbidden affair that became a legend. Everything went smoothly until sunset. As the crew set up a shot near the old garden, the sound technician raised a hand. "Do you hear that?" he asked. At first, no one did. Then, faintly beneath the hum of the city, came the sound. A woman's voice, humming. It was distant, tender, almost like a lullaby. They froze. The voice grew clearer, closer. Yasmin whispered, "Keep recording." The humming stopped. A sudden stillness fell over the garden. Then, from somewhere near the covered pool, a single drop of water echoed. Another, then another. The crew left before dark. When they reviewed the footage later that night, they found something the camera shouldn't have captured. In one frame, just one, a reflection on the surface of the covered pool. A woman's face, eyes open, mouth curved into a faint, sorrowful smile. Yasmin never released the documentary. She deleted the files, quit her project, and left the city. She told her producer that some stories were meant to stay buried, but one clip survived, leaked anonymously years later. It showed 10 seconds of silent footage, a garden, a covered pool, and a reflection that shouldn't exist. People online dissected it endlessly. Some said it was fake, others swore it was real. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the image itself. It was the whisper faintly heard at the end of the clip. A single word. Khalid. The video went viral for a week, then disappeared like everything else in Dubai's digital noise. But the legend returned, stronger than ever. Those who visited the site at night said the air felt heavier, colder. Some claimed they heard someone crying softly near the garden gate. Others said they saw footprints appear in the sand, leading toward the dunes, then stopping abruptly. No one stayed long enough to find out more. Today the mansion still stands, refurbished, renamed, and unlisted on most maps. The company that owns it denies all rumors. They rent it out for private events, though bookings often cancel without reason. Drivers who pass by at night avoid looking through the gates. They say if you glance too long, you might catch a shimmer of movement near the garden, a flicker of green, like the glint of an emerald pendant. The desert wind still carries her story, reshaping it each time it's told. Some say Amira was buried beneath the palm tree. Others say she never died, that she ran and was silenced by those who feared the truth. But those who have seen the reflection know. Better, she's still there, watching, waiting. And somewhere, in the silence of the dunes, another whisper answers her. The voice of a man who walked into the desert and never returned. Two souls bound by a secret they could never confess, forever repeating the moment that destroyed them. The city sleeps, but their story doesn't. It breathes through the walls, through the wind, through the hearts of those who dare to listen. And if you ever find yourself standing near that old palace at midnight, and you hear a faint voice calling a name that isn't yours, don't look back, because some loves are cursed not by hatred, but by memory. They began with a whisper, and they will end with one. Sometimes, when night falls over the desert, the world grows so still that the past feels close enough to touch. The sand loses its warmth, the wind quiets, and the city lights blink like distant stars, cold, unreachable. And somewhere out there, beneath that endless stretch of silence, a story like theirs still lingers. Amira and Khalid were never meant to meet. Every rule of their world forbade it. But love doesn't recognize rank or wealth. It sees, it chooses, and it destroys with the same gentle hand that once caressed. In a city built on glass and secrets, their love became the crack no one could hide. Those who tell the tale now don't agree on details. Some say she fell, some say she was pushed. Others insist she was driven to despair by the promise of a future that never came. But one truth survives them all. She loved him, and he couldn't save her. And maybe that is the truest crime of all. Khalid's name no longer appears in the records of the royal family. His properties were sold, his title dissolved into history. Yet, when the wind moves through the old district where his palace once stood, people say they hear two sets of footsteps, one slow, heavy, deliberate, and another light as silk. They never meet, always moving in opposite directions, doomed to search for one another across eternity. Layla's portrait still hangs in a museum somewhere in Abu Dhabi, the caption reading only Lady of the Desert Light. Tourists pause before it, struck by the sadness in her eyes, unaware of what those eyes once saw. She outlived them both, trapped in the shadow of her own decisions, learning too late that revenge has no finish line, only circles. Years later, when the garden was replaced by glass towers and fountains, construction workers found a stone marker beneath the soil. No name, no date, just a single line carved into the rock. Love buried here never sleeps. No one claimed it. They built over it, of course. But at night, when the fountains shut down and the traffic fades, you can still hear the faint sound of dripping water, soft and steady, as if the earth remembers what men choose to forget. It's strange how stories like these survive. They slip through censorship, through fear, through time, because, somewhere deep down, people recognize themselves in the tragedy, the desire to be seen, to be chosen, to be remembered, even when the price is everything. Amira wanted to be free. Khalid wanted to be forgiven. Layla wanted to be enough. None of them got what they wanted, but all of them got what they deserved. And so, the tale endures, whispered in salons, in coffee shops, on midnight drives past empty gates. The details fade, the names change, but the rhythm stays the same. Forbidden love, betrayal, silence, loss. Every city has a story. It hides behind its beauty. Dubai has this one. So, if you ever find yourself staring into still water under the desert sky, listen closely. If you hear a voice, don't be afraid. It's only a reminder that love, when silenced, never dies quietly. It lingers, it watches, it whispers. Because in the end, all sins become stories, and all stories eventually find someone willing to listen. And tonight, that someone was you.